time using like natural evidences that we see on the earth that show there has to be some creator. And then they end up, diving into it more and more and then coming to Yah. So like using physical evidence isn't bad. It would be akin to saying I can't use the fact there's marine fossils on the top of mountains, or that there are Egyptian chariot wheels in the bottom of the Red Sea, or that there's almost pure sulfur found in the area described as Sodom and Gomorrah, and that there's a pillar of soft and biological material there that would have been at a distance seeing Sodom and Gomorrah, and that there's glass inside the sand, which required the glass get up to over 3,000 degrees, and on and on and on. This has been given to us as believers to show that the more that people try to debunk the Bible, that they just it keeps backfiring and it keeps on verifying the Bible more and more over time. Right? For the argument to be consistent, I shouldn't use any of the archaeological or anthropological or physical evidence
No.
that we've discovered on Earth that verify the Bible. But of course, no Christian would make that argument, right? So I don't know why we wouldn't at least like approach this like every other topic and just
I
see
don't
if it's
trust it.
legit.
I'm sorry. I know, but I just absolutely in my gut, I don't trust it.
There's one thing that I've kind of looked into, and that's the fire that it survived. That's a very interesting story. Because the heat was so intense that it melted silver. And
Yeah,
that caused... Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that caused the triangle burns in the cloth. And there were two guys that risked their lives, and they went in and they took the hot box that it was in and dragged it out of the fire to save it.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah. So they risked their lives going into a heat that was so hot that it melted silver on the casing. Yet they took it out. Like that, it was so precious to them, you know?
Can I
Makes
ask
you
just a
wonder.
general question about like what level of skepticism, like taking a lot of these claims that are like third party and unverified? Like, why believe all of these things? I mean, people talk about like with the shape of the earth, like not to just believe like NASA and these different types of like, I'm just wondering why so many leaps are made in this topic to just believe all these like historical claims and they pulled it out of a fire and that there's wheels of, at the base of the sea, all these different sulfur, like what, have any of you guys verified any of this, or is it just kind
Yeah,
of
dude, there are individuals that have gone there and picked up the sulfur themselves. There are videos everywhere. So I'm not gonna just be like full conspiracy crazy, like all these like videos with 27 views and 300 views of people on YouTube going to the area and finding the sulfur balls in the sand themselves are all fake or part of some conspiracy. To me, that's way more crazy than just there's sulfur there. I mean, people could claim there's another reason for the sulfur being there, but there's pretty clearly an area where there's a bunch of sulfur that's very pure in the sand.
I don't deny that. I just don't trust man, when it comes to my Messiah, because this shroud guy looks way too much like the Caesar Borgia, Jesus that they hand us and the statues. So, of course, everybody can believe what they want to believe. I just want to bring up what's that?
But what does Jesus look like? Wouldn't you have to
We have
know
no
what Jesus
idea.
looks like?
No
So for
idea.
you to claim that doesn't look like Jesus, like I
So
don't get it.
the fact that they prop up a white-looking, long-haired, blonde, blue-eyed Jesus, and
You
this
can't tell that from the Shroud of Turin. It's ridiculous. That's
Okay.
that's entirely you putting that on the shroud, dude. No
It
one
is.
said it was blue eyes. What did his eyeballs imprint onto the thing, dude? Come on.
This guy could definitely just be Middle Eastern pigment, right? I mean, this is
Well, that's
what
what
a
I was
typical Jewish guy back then would look like.
That's what I was going to say a while ago. Is when you
It looks
said
like an Arab.
when she said he looks 70 instead of supposed to be in his 30s. But if you look at Middle Eastern guys today, 30 and 40-year-olds look much older than American 30 and 40-year-olds. I don't know if it's the desert or if it's the the where they are just they don't live like we do. Just the way we live compared to the way they live, and especially back in those days, I can imagine everybody probably looked much older. They had much harder lives.
He didn't look anywhere close to
Yeah.
70 to me. I mean, like if some guy was just like beaten and crucified, right? And then this would be the initial stage, like this instantaneous transformation into the resurrected body. Like I don't. I mean, look at like it's got a crown, it's got piercing, it's got. I mean, if you read, like his back is just like destroyed. If you look at if you read the scriptures, like, I mean, he was in bad shape, right? And you
Yeah.
can actually just throw the Bible out for a second, and there's extra biblical sources that confirm there was, in fact, a guy that was considered a rebel by the Romans, that they considered a threat because people kept following him, and that the Jewish priests at the time didn't like him because he was undermining all of their beliefs, and people kept following him no matter what threats they made. They considered him a problem, and then they end up crucifying him. And there was this guy that was well known, right? That people were willing to die for, that was crucified by the Romans. You can establish all that without the Bible. I mean, we can always go the route of all of history is a lie and all of history is fake. But I don't necessarily believe that, right? Like I don't think all of history should just be swallowed whole or something. But if you actually think about the implications of the claim that it's all fake, that's pretty crazy, bro. You're saying that they went and dug something in the ground a few hundred years ago, knowing someone might dig it up later. Stuff like that. Like all of history can't literally all be fake. Obviously, there was history. People did live before us, and we do dig in the ground and find like cities and artifacts and stuff, right? Like
Well, I guess like
he wasn't buried. He wasn't buried. Sorry, Gio. Go ahead.
Well, I mean, maybe I should not be involved in. If you guys are doing more of an internal critique on this, all these ideas, and maybe like because I was kind of bringing in like almost like external critique, like debate points or whatever. So if we're not doing that, I don't have to bring that up. But
let's do it.
I mean, dude, like they've lied about the globe and there's a history of the globe, a 2,000+ year history. So it's like that all is fake, but then all this other religious stuff is legit. You know what I'm saying? So it's like what history is legit? Because there's a whole history.
Those are totally different things, bro.
Earth.
Like I'm talking about, like okay,
the Vatican. It's a Jewish conspiracy. Clearly, it's a Judeo conspiracy. So I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of maybe more like feisty to want to like.
No, I agree with that. First, for one, I brought this conversation to the table specifically inviting external critique, right? Like so, like I don't like if it's fake, I would love to be able to formulate an argument that refutes it. But like because I'm highly skeptical of the church and the Catholics in specific, right, and all the stuff that they claim. But I do think that they've locked up a lot of the historical information that they don't want out in the public because it contradicts a lot of their narratives or the mainstream narratives. And that's why they have everything under lock and key. I think we'd be amazed if we saw what was under the Vatican, right? But who knows? But that's why I made the specific distinction between like archaeology and anthropology, for example. Like in order to still man the idea that all of that history is fake, then I would have to come up with an answer as to why this stuff is buried deep in the ground and then dug up. We would have to say that these powers that be that wanted to create fake history, they buried that stuff, right? That's what we'd have to say. If that stuff's not real.
I mean, I don't think that that's too far of a reach. I mean, I'm just looking at this, what Gio posted. I clearly see a mustache and okay, you want to say like maybe a goatee or something. And I don't know that he was buried with a crown, right? I mean, I don't know. He had it when
I know you don't know because it doesn't tell us if he was or wasn't. So
right,
like,
but I doubt that. And the biggest thing for me, he was in a cave. Like he wasn't buried in the ground, right? Like okay, the cave is like kind of they say like buried in the ground, but like I don't know.
What's the relevance of that? No one's saying he was buried. Like we know that linen can be preserved for long periods of time. They opened up like the King Tut and saw that there were linen fabric there that was thousands of years old. And by the way, everyone can disagree here, but I'm not the kind of like quote unquote truther that just says all of history was fake. I think history.
Did I say that? I don't know.
I didn't say you said that.
Well, why are you saying it?
Because this was the topic I was talking about.
Yeah, he's just letting the room know.
It's in reference to what Gio was talking about specifically, but like
I don't know. It sounds like you're really defensive.
Wait, you are super defensive right now, actually. So
I said you are.
I'm not. I'm super chill. I'm making a simple point, right? Like this idea that all of history is fake, in my opinion, is way more conspiratorial, like requires way more faith, because a lot of stuff could have been fabricated about history, but we do know that people lived before us. We do know that some of their remains and artifacts would have logically been left behind, and that there would be stuff underneath the ground that we could dig up about past civilizations. That would be like a necessary implication of people living on Earth before us. So now we're just going to arbitrarily pick and choose what's fake or real, or throw it all out and act like it's all fake. Neither one of those makes sense to me, nor does just claiming it's all real make any sense, right?
Okay,
But like,
No, but
let's
that's the problem with what historians do with like these kinds of findings is they interpret it and then they immediately try to fit it in their understanding, in their anticipation, in their presupposition of what it would have been like. Right?
and that's
That's what
always
they usually do.
anti-Bible. That bias is always anti-Bible. So,
so
you
Yeah,
know,
I'm sure it is, but I mean, it's the universal problem with all of history is that we've been given some sort of timeline of how it's supposed to all went roughly, and that's what they're going to adapt whatever they're going to find to. And if there's parts that don't make any sense, they literally ignore it. They
right,
don't
that's what
bring
I'm
it up.
saying. I'm making the point that the idea that history was faked to support the Bible isn't true. You would have to ignore all the evidence we have about what they actually lied about in terms of history, because they have consistently hidden things that support the Bible, consistently built timelines in an attempt to disprove the Bible, and they've consistently practiced mainstream archaeology and anthropology with an anti-Bible bias. So this idea that all of archaeology and anthropology was actually secretly trying to like create the illusion the Bible was real is extremely inconsistent with what has actually happened, and just with the idea itself. It's internally contradicted.
Yeah,
So
but I mean, if you really think about it, the Vatican and its power, its money power, its intelligence power, its knowledge base, all its alchemy that it gathered, like it could have technically rewritten the history and literally gone to these locations in Palestine, Israel, and all that to
you mean the whole
literally
world?
make it there, to literally plant the evidence, let's say hundreds of years ahead,
But
to create
sure,
it.
sure. But you agree that that's just an idea that you would propose with literally no evidence. This is again my point.
No,
It's
but
like
it's
it
in their
would be
interest.
internally
They want
inconsistent
to
to say,
be the arbiter of the Bible.
okay,
It's for
the,
pure theocratic power. If they
okay,
literally
dude, you just
create a
interrupted
history
me,
the way
bro.
they wanted it, and they just say, like, screw it, we are going to create it like this. That other format and how this stuff happens, that's not in our control. So we have to get rid of that and create a transplanted version. And we're literally going to spend a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of our agents to go to these regions and create this evidence there. It would be very much doable, you see, if
No
they
one said
had
it
actually
wasn't
wanted to do that.
doable. Okay, so please don't interrupt me this time. Okay, so the point is, though, it is just inconsistent standards of what is acceptable as argumentation. This is similar to when an atheist will pretend that they have no burden of proof because they're just the skeptical position. They're just saying no, they do have a burden of proof intrinsically. They're claiming it's possible that this place exists without a creator. There is a burden of proof intrinsically with the claim, even if they're claiming to be agnostic. Same here, right? To claim that it is fake, then you would require claims such as this very elaborate conspiracy where they're burying things hundreds of years in advance, right? To fake an entire historical timeline. Didn't say it was impossible. I'm just saying, okay, do you have evidence of that? Of course not. So then, like, to argue that that's a
How
more
would you know?
probable position or something would be inconsistent, of course, right? That's the point. That's the
But how
point.
would you know there's evidence for it if they literally did that 1,000 years ago? Uh, there's no fresh dugging prints and all that, right? There's time smoothens things out. All that has to be there is the right things in the right location for the story to work out for whoever's going to bump into it. If they just
I'm not
planned it
saying that it's
carefully,
impossible or that you would be able to prove it What I'm saying is, I just think that I bring up the point because I don't think most people even really think about the implications of what they're saying. They're just like, we're lied to all the time about everything. We found out so much of the stuff they told us is true is a lie. I'm not going to blindly believe it, so I'm going to dismiss it. I think that's a reasonable position, but on a surface, it sounds much more reasonable than it really is because people don't realize the implications of that claim, right? To challenge all of the historical claims of timelines, civilizations, and archaeological and anthropological evidence, it requires a claim that there was a very elaborate effort internationally, not just in Israel, this is all over the world, over the course of hundreds and thousands of years, where they were digging up the real remains, removing them, replacing them with fake remains for a conspiracy to then be discovered thousands of years in advance. Right? That
but
is
now
a
you're taking it to
very
Old
wild claim, in my opinion. I don't give these people that much power. I think people give them way too much power. I don't think that they run the whole world and control everything that happens on it. They can't control what we dig up in
Me
our
neither. So
backyard.
let's not get wandering off. Like, I don't think that the Old Testament was faked. What I'm saying is that the locations of the New Testament might have been displaced, and that is very within the range of what you can actually do with the Council of Nicaea, right? And you might have to go into the Crusades to conquer the territory to secure it to be able to do all these things, even, for example. So I don't think
This
it's
kind
that
of goes back to my
outrageous an
other
idea,
claim.
but the
So,
Old Testament is different. I don't think
how?
I don't think they changed anything about that because that would have
Okay,
been
well, that's just
2,000.
an arbitrary standard that you're saying one's more reasonable than the other or whatever. Like, to be consistent, they could have faked all of it. And I'm just saying, well, like if I hear Christians say this, it's interesting because I know that those same Christians would defend a lot of the things that we've discovered that support the Bible. Like when they
If you
found
think I'm a Christian,
Jericho.
I'm not a Christian. I'm a
Okay,
follower
you
of
don't
the
follow Christ.
way.
Okay,
I'm a
so
follower of the way.
okay, they're just pedantic. So,
Okay, no,
like,
hold on a second.
Well, there's no
Let's
Christians like
clear
that
this up
anymore.
because Christianity isn't that don't they say that you have to believe that Jesus is both God and the Son? And
no,
isn't Christianity a lawless gospel?
no,
It's not.
no.
Oh, okay.
Christian is just a word that has like tons of
What
different subsects of
why don't we use
denominations.
messianist?
Now your argument is why don't we use a different word? Like I don't care about that. Like no, the answer to your question is no. No, Christianity isn't those things you said because
Yes,
Christianity
it
and
is.
Christian is just
It's
no, it's
Trinity.
not.
Yeah.
No, the vast majority of it, if modern denominations push those ideas, not even all modern denominations push those ideas.
Okay, where does Christianity fit God into the mix? The
There
Most
are
High.
many. Wait. Are you denying that there are denominations that reject the Trinity?
No, I'm not. I'm saying the majority of Christians,
Are you sure?
Christianity,
Okay. So you've changed your
majority.
claim. So then that isn't what the word Christian means. The word Christian doesn't mean those things. The fact that a bunch of modern Christians believe those things doesn't mean that the word Christian means those things. Christian means to follow Christ.
Okay, where does God fit into that?
He isn't excluded from that. Following Christ isn't mutually exclusive to cutting God out of it.
Yeah, it kind of is.
So it's just, no,
I
it's
mean,
not.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I follow Christ, and
to be a
Christ told me
Christian
that
is
everything
to
comes from the Father.
recognize
So,
God, though.
no,
That is
well, the fact that I
definitely
follow Christ is why I recognize the Father.
yeah, no doubt, because
Okay, so
you're
you've
into
been
the script.
debunked
You're into
then.
the
That
front of the
claim.
book. No, you're into the front of the book. Most Christians think it's been done away with, and it's weird that you don't even you're not even acknowledging the fact that
I
that's the
already did
truth.
acknowledge that. I just acknowledged that. I literally just did. So now you just lied. So,
Oh
like,
yeah, I'm such a liar.
well, you just lied. So, I mean, I did. You're saying it's weird I'm trying to hide and not acknowledge that. I just acknowledged it literally 3 times, 3 separate times in the last 2 minutes. I
And
acknowledged
I'm a
it.
liar because I might have to modify my
Well,
conversation.
then maybe you should calm down a
I'm the
little
liar.
bit and you should be very cautious about making accusations about someone you claim to be a sister of, because I have for sure said that very thing and brought attention to it in front of probably more people than anyone in this room. Like, so how is it somehow now all of a sudden I'm hiding it? I've
No,
exposed
I
more
want you to be
Christianity than almost
consistent.
anyone in here.
I'm just asking you to be consistent.
I actually am being consistent, which is why I'm not scared to say I'm a Christian because it means to follow Christ. It's the
I'm
same
a
when
Hebrew.
someone says, Okay, cool.
I'm a Hebrew.
Man. Okay, you're
It
better
means
than me.
crossed over.
Okay. So
No,
like
maybe
I can be both of those. I can be both of those things. I can be a Yehudim follower of Yah and a Christian.
well,
And
I just don't see, let's be real. I don't see, we are grafted into the house of Israel, right? So let's just really try to keep it authentic, like the front of the book, like how Messiah is and everything, because I don't see in the book of Revelation any kind of sect of Christianity that is on the gates, right? So I'm taking the opportunity to expose Messiah even says he only is coming back for the house of Israel. That's it. Not like Christians, but yeah, everybody, if you're a believer and you're a follower of Messiah, you are grafted into the house of Israel.
even the ones that are currently deceived about certain parts of their doctrine. Because
Okay.
there's
I mean,
forgiveness and ignorance. So the last thing we should do is tell them that they're not truly saved or something, right? Because
no, I
there's
didn't.
forgiveness and ignorance,
No,
right?
but maybe we should start informing them of the front of the book and how the story is cohesive and it has
Well,
direction.
I've been doing that for 5 years. So when you imply that I don't do that, it seems super disingenuous.
Well, I'm the opportunity right now is what I'm referencing.
Well, okay. I mean, if you're I'll give you my position as to why I don't reject it. I don't when someone asks if I'm a Christian, I say yes, and then I immediately explain. Although I don't identify with any of the mainstream doctrines or mainstream churchianity or Christianity or any of those denominations, because most of them are flooded with doctrines of devils and et cetera, et cetera. But technically, yes, I follow Christ. I follow Messiah, Yeshua.
Yeah,
Okay,
of
well,
course,
that's
he's our
way
high
more
priest.
beneficial than just saying, in
Well,
my opinion, it's more fruitful than just saying, like jumping in to say, I'm not a Christian and Christians believe this, this, and this. It's like, okay, well, you can try that approach and I'll try my approach, right? It's like if someone asks me if I'm a flat earther, I'm not going to just say no and walk away, right? Even though technically I'm not. I don't think the earth is a whole object. I think earth just means land. And I just think land was brought up out of the water. And I think it's actually a topographical plane. I think flat earth is kind of like a deceptive term to push us into a false binary, but I'm not just going to run away from it. I'm not going to cower from it. If someone asks me, are you one of those flat earth guys? I know they're making fun of anyone that's brave enough to challenge the mainstream model and think for themselves. So I'm going to defend the position. I'm going to defend those people. Same thing with Christians, right? Like I'm not going to run away from that term. I'm not going to give them the power that some term, right, can dictate what I do or do not believe. If I run away from the term Christian, basically what I'm saying is that I'm giving them the power to define what that means and has to be and put me in a box.
well,
But no, they don't get to do that.
Yeah, well, you just so the way that you can offend the Christians is the doctrine of demon and it's this and everything that you just said. So your way is better than my way when I just say I'm not a Christian. Oh, really? What are you? I'm a follower of the way. I'm a Hebrew because it means crossed over. Crossed over from what? From death to life, right? And like I don't know. I didn't
Well, I didn't say
insult
anyone was
anybody.
better than anyone. It was just that you jumped in to the conversation to make that point. You interjected and halted the conversation to point out that you weren't a Christian and Christians basically implies being Christians aren't really saved. So it's
No, I
like,
didn't say they weren't saved. I
No,
said
you
it's
said
a lawless gospel that has a different Messiah. It has a different spirit and different laws. Right? There's like no laws. It's all been done away with. This is
a
where,
lot, no, a lot of modern Christianity does that.
yeah, a lot.
Okay, but not all Christians do that. So it's like,
Okay. Well, I just don't see Christians in the front of the book. That's all. Like I'm just, I'm just trying to tell you that we have one doctrine, and I know you know this.
and I mean, yes, but even the more important point that I was making, right, is like, certainly as believers, we should not just exclude all of history because, in my opinion, it's a huge blessing given to us from the Creator. That what they've
Wow.
tried to do is lie about the Bible a lot. They've tried to undermine it. They tried to claim it was fake and claim it was a fairy tale. They tried to claim that the Exodus story was fake. And mainstream Egyptology tried to debunk the Bible by saying, look, they didn't even get the basic timeline right. You know, that's not even who was
I
in
didn't
charge at the
say that
time.
history was fake. All of history was fake.
I'm not
Obviously.
talking to you
Well,
specifically, though. I'm just
well,
making a
why
general
then
wake up?
point, which is how it
I'm
started. And you keep on jumping in and saying, I didn't say that. Or why are you claiming I'm not saying that?
Because you're having a conversation. We
right.
are having a conversation
Sure.
together.
Well, Witsit seems to be less egotistical in this conversation, unlike Blaze. So try to match him on that.
Okay, thanks. Appreciate it.
Look, I do have to go here in a second, but like this, to make my general point, it's like you can see how y'all's kind of laughing at mainstream academia because they're like, oh, you thought you were going to trick the world into claiming all this is fake. But one thing that they don't have control over is just someone digging something up in a few decades. And so what's happened over time is though they put all this effort into trying to undermine the scriptures, there's been new discoveries that happen over time that keep on verifying it. And my opinion is, my stance is that's one of the few things that they can't control. They can't fully
Well,
control everything that's underneath our feet. And so
I
that's
know,
just
but
like a way that the creator has control that they cannot take away.
digging up other stuff, right? Other relics and things like that from the past is what you're saying, because you're not saying the shroud was dug up.
No, of course not. No, the shrouds. The shroud is somewhat sketchy on its face because it's like it's claimed that the first historical documentation we have of it's like 1500s, which is why I was super skeptical of it and looked into it. And then I'm having trouble debunking it. I don't even see a way that it can be replicated with modern technology. So I'm happy for anyone to show me how it could be replicated. That way that I could then, say that. But I can't honestly say that right now. I've found nothing at all that can be used to replicate it, even with modern technology, much less 1500 years ago.
Yeah, but we don't know how they're doing the satellite system. That doesn't mean they're not faking satellites.
No, of course, it doesn't mean that it's true. It's just like, I mean, obviously, it's pretty wild. I think it's pretty wild. Like, the amount of energy that would be needed would destroy the linen. I mean, I can't conceive of a way.
Unless they had a way where it wouldn't, right? So it's just a technical mystery, as in it cannot be deciphered how
Yeah,
it's meant to be, and that's really the
but it would be
only
very
policy.
lazy just to say, since we don't know, we don't look into things. Since when did we adopt that approach, right? Because that's kind of the implication. Is like, since we can't know,
No,
or
it
it could have
isn't.
been faked. It is though.
No, that's not my conclusion. It's not anybody that had the discussion's conclusion. So
Well, then everyone would
you're
agree that
pointing
we
at
should
other
keep
people that
researching
are
it
not
then.
involved in this conversation, right? The fact remains, Shroud of Turin is a mystery because it cannot be recreated in any way. That doesn't mean that it's real. It just means it's a mystery that leaves it open ended. And it could be possible, maybe, but it's just, how would you know? Like, we can't recreate it, so we don't really know what happened there, how that was done, what happened to it. It's a mystery.
Okay, yeah, I'm not going to keep repeating. We all know that the implication is we can't know. There's no way we will be able to know, and it's just kind
That's
of
not what I
dismissed as
said.
probably fake. All right, dude, you interrupt every time, bro.
Yeah, but I didn't say we will not be
Well,
able to
whatever you're about to
figure
say
out
now doesn't
how. We
justify
just don't
interrupting.
know
So,
right now. But it could be figured out at some point. You never really know. I mean, it certainly sparked my curiosity. I didn't know that the whole Shrine of Turin, that nobody was able to like replicate. That's a new fact about it that I did not know before this conversation today. So I thank you for sharing that. I did not know that. That makes it actually interesting to me. I didn't think it was all that interesting before, but now it has piqued my curiosity. And it'll certainly make me a lot more skeptical anytime I see any kind of like article that tells me, oh, it's been debunked. It's like, oh, really? How? If you can't even replicate the effect, then how would you know it's a forgery?
Well, if you've never touched it or done anything with it yourself, how would you really know anything about it other than just what others claim? I know it's kind of a basic point, but it's just like, when there's just like claims of what people have done to it, and it's like people making claims about dinosaur bones, but if you've never been able to even test it yourself, it just takes a lot of trust, I guess.
Yeah, but I mean, it's also in the nature of people that if they figure it out, then they want to get the credit for it, and they will share how that works. It's very hard to get that out of the newspapers or whatever. There's going to be some trace of somebody that actually did it. But if nobody's been able to replicate it in all the centuries, I mean, that really does stand out. That makes it kind of special. Right?
Can I just ask maybe that
figured out, but it isn't. It hasn't been for all this time. That is fascinating.
I was going to say something slightly different, but does anyone else have a response to that? Or I don't know, maybe I'm just in a more of a mood of kind of like external critiquing of like the whole religion, I guess. Maybe is that not what we're doing right now? If it's not, I don't have to go there, but I guess I just like the question was going to be like many of us think the globe is false, and that's obviously like there's millions and billions of people that believe in it. And this Christian religion is like the number one religion, it's like 2 point something billion people they claim. So I just wondered, like, how does anyone have an argument that this is like is the claim that this huge religion is legit, or that there's a legit layer to it? With all
my claim is that big number is like the fake version that's all been lied about, and because they couldn't get it to go away completely, so the best thing is to lie about it. But I
okay,
gotta.
So your overall point on it is just that there is something legit to it, but that all of the Catholic Church and all of the kind of modern day Christianity stuff is all like a co-opting, is what your position?
Yeah, it's like a lot of it is like subversively altered and deceptive and stuff. Yeah.
To what level do you consider that the whole thing is false? Basically, the whole thing is fabricated.
I mean, I have considered that, but like I said, like a lot of it has to do with my personal experience, right? So it's anecdotal as to the truth being contained in the scriptures, and then there's a lot of corroborative evidence of like the historicity of it for sure. And yeah, some of it requires faith. It's based on my personal experience, So I would say I was super open to it all being fake. I mean, that was kind of my primary idea most of my adult life. But yeah, I think that upon further investigation, it just keeps on kind of like standing the test of time. So
Yeah, well, I hear you on the personal experience part. I know like Matthew Learns was, I don't know if he's in here right now, but he was talking about how like he prays to God kind of thing, like he closes his eyes and he kind of has a thing where he, prays and things. And then he says things happen in his life, after that. And that to him, I mean, I'm not trying to straw man him. I hope I'm not, but I'm just kind of trying to steel man him. And then I asked him like, well, how do you know that's not just you? Like, how does he know it's not just him? Like the power of his own being to like focus on something, ask questions about the nature of his life or whatever. And then something happens, that gives an answer a week later. Like, how does he know that's not just him? Just the potency of his own mind. So I don't know. I mean, that's just one example. Like, because synchronicities are abound. And I mean, I do think there's inspired words in those writings. I'm not saying it's all false or whatever. There's truth, there's spiritual truths and things in there. So I'm not saying it's all that, but I just question just this whole idea that like to have to believe that a man like died and resurrected and all these things that are no way to be claimed, and then the idea that this one guy is like a son of like the concept of God. I guess I just wonder how you guys believe it, basically. So I'm not trying to be rude in that. I'm just wondering how you guys make the leap, I guess, to believe it. Like I just can't see it on my own.
Yeah, me either. I can't either, but I understand what you're saying.
And like to build your whole spirituality on it too, like a bunch of stuff you can't prove. I mean, if you've had real, or you can't validate, if you've had experiences like that, it does make sense to me that you like read the Bible, either have a resonance or have something happen in your life, like a synchronicity. I mean, that makes sense, but
I think like if you're positive, if you're just if you're in a positive state of mind at that time in your life, a lot positivity comes at you. Like it's just like when I'm positive, good things happen because I'm looking for good things that are happening to me. But when I'm negative, boy, a lot of negative shit happens to me. You know, like I just realized that I'm like, oh man, I'm in a funk right now, and everything in my life is funky. You know.
For me,
I just take with Jesus's wisdom and like really focus in on it, and then spot the contradictions that are basically in church going rules and all that, and like in the belief you have to like believe in this and this and that, or you're wrong and you're gonna go to hell. Like I think that all those kind of like church going priestly rules are actually a pollutant that are like community serving, theocracy based, basically mind control, that are all resting on top of that timeless wisdom of what Jesus actually said. And if you just read carefully what he said, you're gonna spot the errors in the modern church, in modern Christians. Like that's how I look at it.
Blaze, if Blaze was going to go, I hear you. I mean, I'm not saying there's not inspired words in those writings. I think there probably were people having mystical experiences back then, and then writing down things like insights that they got. And I don't even doubt that perhaps, like, I mean, who knows, like, what exactly the way that Jesus is portrayed, but I don't doubt that. I mean, I have kind of like an intuitive resonance that he was a very old soul, but I don't think there's anything that, I mean, there's a lot of other old souls. Like, I don't think he's the only one in that way. And he may have been an old soul and had a lot of wisdom, but I'm just wondering where that goes. Like, instead of just like taking some inspired words and integrating them into your life, where it goes from that to, this guy had to die for my sins, and his blood is bloodshed for my thing in the afterlife, and then he
Right.
died and resurrected, and then I
But
just
that's the
don't.
theocracy. Those are those little churchy rules. That's what like the priests debacle about among one another, right? In those eras, because they had all that time on their hands and they had to justify why they're there, and they're basically creating theocracy rules, which fundamentally are completely the opposite of why Jesus would even like be teaching people, which is like liberating in nature. They try to just turn it into like a judicial system. And that's the modern church. That's on top of that. It kind of grew out of it. It let go of the reins. And then the people just start mimicking the theocracy based rules instead of going back to the core teachings, the liberating individualist teachings of Jesus himself. And that's the predicament we find ourselves in.
Go
Blaze,
ahead,
were you
Cole.
gonna?
Yeah,
Blaze was
thanks. If Cole wants to go, I can go after him.
I was just going to say the whole idea of Jesus dying for our sins is supposed to be in the Old Testament stuff. Every year you had to make sacrifices with animals. There was like all these things you had to do to beg for your forgiveness. You had to basically make sacrifices and do things. And when Jesus come along, he said, "This is the new covenant. I'm going to die for all your sins. You'll no longer have to make those animal sacrifices. You no longer have to do the things that was supposed to be required every year of you. Once I die for your sins, all you have to do is follow me, and I will be the way you get to heaven."
Yeah, but see, I would even contest that to something like, why does, see, I guess it has to go with like a belief of what God is, maybe, because why would is God some bloodthirsty psychopath that needs blood sacrifices by Jesus or animals? Like, I'm not trying to be rude in saying that, but like, where does that even come from? Because like, I don't think anyone has to die. Like, in my viewpoint, nobody has to die for anyone's sins. Like, if you do something wrong, that's your own thing. I think you have to improve yourself, or else there'll be a reaction to your negative things. And I do think that, I mean, I have my whole view on everything. I do think we're on a journey of becoming better people and learning and going through trial and error and figuring it out. But even the idea that somebody had to die for your sins, just to me is, it's just not true in my viewpoint. I'm not trying to tell anyone else what it has to be for them, but
I agree with you. But I think that is like part of the trick, basically, that Jesus really tried to apply, because there was an old world and everything was way more pagan minded. Like this whole sacrifice to the god is fundamentally ancient pagan. And what Jesus did was try to wean everybody off that. And that's also reforming the God and basically rejecting the old format of God, reinventing him, which is what caused so much trouble. But I mean, that is how I see what he really did. Right?
Messiah died because he had to die so that he could be resurrected to be at the right hand of the Father, and he is our high priest. Anyways, that's not what I wanted to say. For me, I was in a dark place with the Pizzagate stuff in 2016. I mean, like, it really affected me big time. Like, for months, I got down to like really, really thin. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Like, it was really affecting me. And then one day, I had an adult temper tantrum. You probably heard it, Gio, like throwing things, crying, moving things off my desk, just throwing an adult temper tantrum. And that night I went to bed, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if it was sleep paralysis. I didn't feel like I couldn't move, but the entity, I felt like it was trying to take me up, right? I was not religious. I didn't believe in like anything. Nothing. I didn't even have any kind of upbringing like that. And a buddy in 2010 told me about this guy, sleep paralysis, alienresistance.org. And he was saying that they were interviewing people. This guy was a scientist. He didn't believe in God or the sun or anything. And he said he kept, interviewing and people that had probings and abduction experiences and stuff. And it was like this common theme of like, they would yell out, Jesus is my savior, or him, or something like that. And then it would stop. Now, I've had sleep paralysis for sure 2 other times. Anyways, I said, Jesus is my savior. And the thing moved away from me. It was a cloud. And then it came back. And then I kept saying it, right? And long story short, at the next day, I was like, oh my gosh, I felt like I had a superpower. And I was like feeling so amazing. And I was thinking, if there's so much evil, there has to be good. There just has to be good. So I picked up the Bible and started reading the Bible. Lo and behold, I see like conspiracies, and there was a reason I woke up. And so I don't know. It was a feeling that I had that was like, I felt safe because of the evil in the world and the like demonicness of it. I felt like I had power over it.
Just to answer your point a while ago, Jesus died for our sins, and that's what that whole saying means. Jesus died for our sins.
Yeah, because he's our high priest, right? He's mediating to the Father for us, right? He is our high priest.
Yes, but we had to make sacrifices before, and after the new covenant in him, we no longer had to do that. That's what that means.
Yeah, of course. Well, there's no temple. So when there's going to be a temple for the 1,000-year millennial reign, there's going to be sacrifices. Sure, there's not going to be any more sin sacrifices that I know of, but there's going to be other sacrifices. The priests had to eat as well. And the transgression of sin, of the law, is sin. So there is some kind of blood guilt. I'm not going to sit here and say I know exactly why. Well, I mean, it was kind of like, that animal represented you. So, I'm sure it wasn't like really that awesome to be able to go, oh my gosh, I sinned. Now I have to sacrifice this animal. And then the priest ate the animal. So it wasn't like you just sacrifice of, like barbaric sacrificing an animal and then you just leave it there.
Well,
I appreciate you. I appreciate you sharing. I mean, I've heard your story before as well, but yeah, I always appreciate hearing the more nuanced layers of it. And yeah, it does make sense to me that you with that experience you shared.
Have you ever had sleep paralysis? Do you know what it is?
Yeah.
Have you ever had it?
Yeah. Different layers of it. You mean like where you just can't move basically? And you're like in between?
Yeah, like it's kind of terrifying. The first time I didn't feel like I couldn't move, but the other 2 times, whoa. And then I think I just had it like, I don't know, 6 months ago or something, but I don't know.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear you're doing better. I'm glad to hear that you're not depressed and that you're.
Oh, that was in 2016, early 2017.
I'm still glad to hear you're doing good.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Gio.
Well, I mean, I guess like I was gonna say, so like when people have like spiritual experiences, either like meditation, sleep states can create these, like the using breath, and then there are all of the plants, like what people call psychedelics, like the plants that can activate these experiences. Within that whole range of experiences, there are like the human psyche is like incredibly deep, and there's so many layers and levels to like the archetypal layers of the human psyche of different beings, entities, different things that people can experience. And in the whole spectrum of those experiences, people do have experiences of Jesus. Like not all of them though. Like see to me, like if Jesus was like the ultimate truth, it seems like all of those experiences would lead people towards this biblical. But it doesn't necessarily do that. But there is like a percentage, like I don't know if it's 5% or 8%, or there is some percentage. It might even be less than that. I'm not really sure, but there's some like the exact percentage because it's kind of hard to pinpoint. But there is like a percentage of people that will have like, even if they're not Christian, they will have like an actual like visitation from like who they see as Jesus. Like they might not be Christian at all. They might be atheists. They might be another religion. They might be agnostic, and they have an experience, where like of Jesus basically, where there's that occurs, or they might be atheists, they might be another religion, they might be agnostic, and there's some like healing that occurs, or there's some kind of resolution, or there's some communication or something. But then there's also people that have Shiva, the god Shiva, come to them and do that. Or there's a lot of different experiences that people have. So I can understand like Blaze, like just putting it in that context from my viewpoint, like in terms of how you describe that. And then it sounds like that experience kind of set you forth into then reading more of the Bible, and then going with, because there is kind of also that polarity between like dogma and mysticism, where like dogma is more like going right from writings and sticking to the writings that are there, whereas mysticism is like having an experience, like going into it and having an experience yourself. And I notice some folks that are like have more of the Christian dogmatic side of things they'll disparage mysticism, like, oh, that's just mystical BS or garbage, and they'll really try to downplay the direct experience because they say the dogma and the writings and going off of these writings are the only way to go, or the right way, and you got to stick to it strictly and you can't waver from it. And then there's folks that are going to be on the more mystical side of like having experiences directly and then not necessarily being a fan of the dogma side. So it is kind of like a polarity. But yeah, I guess that's kind of
I didn't know anything about the Bible at all. I was kind of a new ager at that point, trying to open up my third eye. And I would have leaned more towards Middle Eastern, like Vipassana meditation, and things like that. I was a clean slate. I didn't know anything. As a matter of fact, I thought the Sabbath was a Seventh-day Adventist thing. Like I thought they were the only ones that did it, so I had no idea. All I know is I felt like I had a superpower, and 3 weeks later, I read that it essentially was saying, "Don't get all puffed up because you can tread on serpents and demons. Just be happy that your name was written in the book." So I can see why people would have questions and not understand. But for me, what was another blessing, I found out that there was other scriptures that were once considered scriptures that they took out. And First Enoch was introduced to me very early on, and I loved it. And it kind of explained to me, I felt like I had some answers of why we're in this mess. Like the central planners, like that they're so evil, and that they had to worship like these entities. And to me, First Enoch lets me know where they come from.
Yeah, I mean, my overall take on all of it, I do think there's truth in the biblical scriptures. I think there's truth. I think there's like inspired. I mean, I don't necessarily see it in the same way of like God and Son of God or Father kind of thing, the way others do, and I've maybe shared some of my viewpoints. But nonetheless, like I do think that there is truth in there, and there is like high vibrational components of it, as there are in a lot of different sacred texts and ancient texts. But I just think that like what currently is going on in Christianity, I also think there's a lot of corruption and there's been a lot of things that have been, so I kind of just see it as a mixed bag. And then like kind of like Arwen was saying, like the kind of churchianity or the political, or like, is there a trick in there is the question. Like I'm not saying it's all BS or anything like that, or it's all fake or something, because there is resonance and truth and vibration, and there is a lot of good things. But then I guess that's the question. And then the thing would be, if there is some layer of deception within it, where there is some darker energies involved, whatever that may be, like parsing out what it would be. The challenge I would see is that if that is the case, and if it's then kind of being presented as all truth, then they would get people to kind of be taking something, and I'm not saying anyone in here is doing this or blaming anyone. I'm just saying, like in the idea of this, that they would then be getting people to take some of the maybe false things or deceptive things or corrupted things along with the good things, and then kind of swallow the whole thing basically, or take the whole thing. And then you get into like in my viewpoint, like the stuff in slavery in the Bible is just wrong. I've heard the arguments for it. I do not think there's legitimacy with the way that is put forth. And therefore, like it cannot be a pure book of all correct morals. But that's a whole separate thing. And I know there's debates for that and so on. And there's also like incest and rape and these different things like in some of these parts, and there's a lot of violence. So I mean anyways, I'm not trying to get into those specific things, but I guess that would just be where the question would be. And then if people are trying to get other people on board with it, and then other people are obviously often resistant. So, I mean, those are just some of my general thoughts. I'm not like an expert in the whole tradition of it. So, but yeah, just kind of voicing some of the thoughts with it. And I guess that's the question. And then when other people say it's the full truth, the only truth, and the nothing but the truth, and it's the way, and it's the God, everybody has to go with this particular Yahweh idea of God and of the whole thing. I think that's where then people get resistant, and they don't want to be convinced of that or preached to about that. And then it kind of ends up a thing where, people that are into it, and then people that are not are either resistant, to it, and then all the different reasons they might be, whether they do think of it like there could be part corruption and part legitimacy, or whether some people just think it's all false. But yeah, it's definitely a big topic.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. What I don't understand is when people say that slavery back then, it was not the same as slavery in America. I think slavery is slavery. I think people were been treated just as shitty back then as what they would have been treated when there was slavery in America.
I mean, that's gonna open up a can of worms if we go there. But
okay, let's not go there. That's true. That is true.
I brought it up as one thing that I do not think that's legitimate. What is written in there about slavery, I think that's just vile and wrong on every level. Like, I also think like capital punishment is wrong. Like murdering someone for doing something wrong, I think is wrong. So in the Bible, it says that all. Oh, if you do this, you'll be put to death. If you do this, you're put to death. I think that's all wrong too. So like to me, it cannot be a book of 100% legitimate truth spiritually. But I don't think it's all false. And I'm just saying that's my viewpoint. I'm not trying to push that or say anyone else has to see it that way. I know people have their arguments for why the slavery is whatever it is, but I'm just saying it can't be, in my viewpoint, of, pure goodness in that sense, or pure truth.
That will kick off a big fight. So let's not go there. I agree. It'll open up a can of worms.
I just like the story. You know what? I love the story, because to me, the Bible, it's not an assortment of random stories, right? It has direction, like I was saying to Witsit, and it's telling a story. And that's what I really resonate with, and learning what that story is. It's so mind-boggling, the story and the intricacy and the things that you read. You read it 25, 30 times, and then you sit in front of it again, and you're like, I did not see that. Wow, that's huge. That's huge. And then, so I'm resonating with the story about it and what the story offers and who the story is about. So I'm well aware that, like, I'd be okay saying that I'm in a cult. I'm okay. It's the creator from my studies of everything. So I'm okay with it. I love the story.
Galley, were you? Yeah, go ahead, Galley. I kind of
My one
jumped in when you came in.
contention is to say that slavery is slavery and slavery is bad. Because even today, there's degrees of slavery, right? Like the Chinese slavery is horrible. Chattel slavery is horrible. There's everywhere throughout history, there's different slaveries, and yeah, it's horrible. But to say that slavery is slavery and slavery is bad, it's not the same. So, like in the 50s, for example, Cole, if I asked you, or if I said to you, you're looking really gay today, doesn't mean the same thing as it means now.
It's completely different. I
It's
think
not.
people would. I think slaves would have been treated bad back then, just like they were treated bad, just like black slaves were treated bad in America. That's why it says in the Bible you can beat them, but you can't kill them, and stuff like that. It literally describes people able to beat their slaves. Well, that's chattel slavery right there.
So I'm isolating.
I think when people try to say it was just indentured servitude, I think that is just blatantly wrong.
So you can only the question would be valid of any one proposition. If I found out, for example, that the Pythagorean theorem is correct, how could I see it as being not correct? Well, I couldn't, because there was one claim. The steps to reach the conclusion were deductively gone through, and now I can't really undo that. But with a compilation of propositions, again, it's just a misnomer. You got to do it proposition by proposition.
What if the proposition is that this entire book is true? And you establish that proposition as true.
That every part of it is?
Again,
so that would be essentially what I'm saying. And then Gio, you already answered. You said, then I guess the thing that I thought was true wasn't true.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I would say there is objective truth, but there is a subjective that each person may have their own subjective, like, truth radar, basically, that kind of idea. Like, there is ultimate truth that is like what is true, but then like each person, has like a subjective, like that's why some people say like my truth or your truth, and then some people debate that and say, well, no, it's not just truth is not just subjective. But I kind of in my mind I sort that out, like there is unobjective truth, but then we each have our own subjective way of going about discerning what is true, and then you could call that my truth, your truth, whatever. But it's kind of like the subjective way that we go about it.
Yeah, there has to be both, right? There has to be both objective and subjective truth. If you have just one, it self-refutes. So if I say there's only subjective truth, well, that's an objective truth claim. All of a sudden, it refutes itself. Now there is objective truth that there's only subjective truth, so there isn't only subjective truth. There is objective truth.
I didn't want to use my gay, boring philosophy epistemological terms, but the question about when you asked me, like, is the proposition, this book is true. Now I'm forced to like play this card of boring, gay philosophical terms, but that would just be again. So that's a claim like this book is true, or the Bible is true, or this math textbook is true. Okay, that is not a claim which is in philosophical terms a deductive claim. It's a claim that could only be established abductively. It would be, contingent truth. So,
well, but it could be.
Well, go ahead.
No, if you weren't done, sorry.
It's boring because I'm going to say a bunch of philosophical shit and no one's going to listen, so it's all good.
like, how many slaves could Jesus have had if he wanted?
Bro, you can't go back to the slavery thing. No, man. Come on, man. We're on a different point. But go ahead.
Well, I didn't mean to kind of clip over you. If you want to keep, I thought you paused for a second. I was just on like the tip of my tongue. I was just going to say how, like, if I wrote a book and it was about a story in my life, let's say, and I wrote this book and it's 30 pages and it describes a story of something that happened to me. Well, if every single thing that I wrote in that book, every word of 30 pages was absolutely what happened, like to a T, it did happen in physical reality, it happened last year or whatever, and it was exactly true, then one could say, yeah, that book is all true. The whole book is true. But if there's anything in that book where maybe I, said, oh, I showed up at the beach at 3:00, but I really showed up at 4:00, well, then yeah, that one thing would be false in the book, and then that would make the whole book couldn't really be said the whole thing is true. And so when it comes to like the Bible, like yeah, with like these 66 books and then this history that no one alive right here today can verify, unless you've had some like extreme like visionary experience where you like went back in time, which I absolutely do think is possible that somebody could do that. Like you can transcend space and time, as it were, and actually, but that's a whole nother like metaphysical way of accessing information, kind of
Can't
thing.
peer
But
review that.
yeah, can't peer review that. But somebody who like, you know, is born in 1985 or 1990, whatever, or, you know, just born like many of us, you know, we really can't verify much, you know, any of it. And even if I wrote a book about a story of my life and I handed it to you, you couldn't verify it either. So why would you believe that the whole story is true in the story of me, you know what I mean? So, but then I know that's where faith comes in, and then belief, and I understand people have different ways of spiritual, you know, connections to things. I mean, I have things that I think spiritually that I probably can't prove to anyone else, but I know they're true, but I'm not trying to prove them to anyone else, you know? So I know that spirituality can be, especially when it comes to like metaphysics and, you know, visions and experiences. So yeah, it does get complicated and complex in that way.
So let's say you did have that spiritual experience and you did go back in time and you verified to yourself that this book is completely true. Would you be able to undo that?
Yeah, I actually found a great way to actually address that point now in a colloquial way, which isn't boring and gay. Because even within objective truth, so you guys talked about two kinds of quote-unquote truth: objective truth, subjective truth. Even within objective truth, there are two different ways in which something can be true. Even within an objective truth, not two different ways. Sorry, there are multiple different ways, but I'm going to talk about two. So there are historical facts, let's say, or facts about the world, one way that the world is or was. So historical fact, that's true in one way, right? And then there are truths about things like mathematical theorems, logically deductive arguments, which are true in a different way. Like a mathematical theorem is true in a way which is different, timeless and universal, as opposed to a contingent fact of history. That's true in a different way. So you'll never be able to, contradict or undo the knowledge of a deductive fact, because all you're going to have to do is or a logically necessary fact or a timeless universal fact like a mathematical theorem, because you're just going to go through the steps one more time and you're going to be like, oh, still checks out. You're going to do that tomorrow, still checks out. You're going to do that tomorrow. But even if it's a historical fact that you were witness to and like you were present, well, there's a whole other boring thing about how you can't even actually truly represent a historical state of affairs linguistically, but that's a separate point.
Well, the whole
let's say you even could represent a historical fact perfectly with perfect accuracy. After time, even if you were witness to it, that memory is going to fade. So you won't know it, and you'll never know it from the moment you even know that fact till from that point onwards. You don't know it the same way you know a mathematical truth or a timeless universal logical truth. They're just two different kinds of truth, and they're two different ways of knowing. And to use the term know and true, like without any sort of delineation in the English language between these two different versions of it, that's where all of the debate and the problems stem from. So yeah,
well,
you could
sorry.
There's a last point. Sorry, I know I'm going on and I know it's boring, but so you could again undo the truth. This book is true, insofar as this book contains a bunch of historical facts and not mathematical theorems. Go ahead.
Well, let's say you could know it to be true for like 2 + 2 = 4 levels, or to the extent of going back in time and literally experiencing it with a bird's eye view. Or, say, my ex-girlfriend's cousin pushed me on a trampoline once and I broke 3 bones in my leg. Am I ever going to forget that my ex-girlfriend's cousin pushed me on a trampoline once and broke 3 bones in my leg? Is that always true? It's true right now. It was true when it happened when I was 12. When does that not become true? It happened.
It's not, again, remember the question is not about, remember I said this is within the realm of objective truth, right? So I'm not saying that that's like that the truth of that would change. We're talking about your knowledge of that truth, right? And even if you could go back with a crystal ball and see that over and over again, yeah, I understand abductively that's going to be very convincing. I would believe it, right? Because I get to like rewatch it. But just technically, philosophically, you can't actually revisit an event that's already happened. You simply can't. So philosophically speaking, you can undo that truth. And in real life, we don't have crystal balls either. So even practically, you'll never know a historical truth the same way you know a mathematical truth. So there can't be a hypothetical where you know it the same way, because philosophically you just can't know these two things the same way. They're just categorically different.
Why not?
Yeah, me breaking my leg it objectively happened, and I can prove it with I could get pictures of the X-ray of my leg. I could get pictures of me in a cast. I could get pictures of my ex-girlfriend's cousin who was there that day. I could get 4 or 5 material witnesses. So why is that not a historical? Why is that not objectively true?
I didn't say it's not objectively true again, so that's why I'm saying the language is probably boring, and like I don't think you're being bad faith, because I'm you're a good guy. But I specifically said again that this is within the realms of objective truth. I didn't say it's not an objective truth. I'm saying even within objective truth, there are different kinds of objective truth. I'm stressing again the word. Think about a mathematical theorem. The conclusions necessarily follow from the premises. It's a timeless truth. It cannot change. Like the laws of logic, they cannot be untrue. Right? It's not possible. They are necessary truths, as opposed to a historical event, which, while it may be objectively true, is still not a necessary truth. It's a contingent truth in the modal sense, meaning that it could have been otherwise. Any historical fact, logically, could have been otherwise. You broke your leg and you broke 3 bones in your leg. Logically speaking, it could have been 4 bones. It could have been 5 bones. It's a contingent truth. It may be objectively true. It's still a contingent truth.
What? Did anyone follow that? That is just a pretzel.
I mean, this is I promise you, this is just basic philosophy. I'm not even trying to be condescending.
That is like, what?
Do
I mean, are you saying you
believe-
can't prove it? Are you saying the problem is you can't prove
No.
Like he can't prove that he broke his bones? Because
No.
like if in physical reality, in what we call physical reality and all that, he did get pushed on the trampoline and broke the bones, how is that not just I realize it may be hard to prove, maybe hard to validate, which that gets into history and, like, because like if Galley wrote me a 5-page story that said that how he broke his leg and everything, he went to the hospital, that all could be dead true. But for him to get me to believe it would be, you know what I mean? Like there would be no reason for me just to, unless I have some kind of faith or some reason to believe him, so are you saying proving it? Because otherwise, how is it any different than an actual truth of something that did indeed happen?
No. So this is actually a very boring point, but I think it's very important for actually people to know this point. It's like two different kinds of truths.
Well, if we're gonna go into it, we'd have to break it down because you were saying.
I'll break it down simply.
I'm sorry, I kind of reacted, but it was just such a pretzel.
No, it's cool. I like it. It's cool, but like I'll just go.
I try to define the 3 truths and see if the room follows and see if you agree.
Just do necessary.
You said there's objective truth, there's necessary truth, and there's contingent truth.
Just do necessary and contingent, because we're talking only about objective truth right now. So if you want, just do necessary and contingent, and we'll see maybe if they understand your explanation better than mine, which is quite possible. Go ahead.
So a necessary truth is something that's true, and it can't be false under any circumstance, any possible circumstance. So its negation is impossible, or it'd be self-contradictory. So like all bachelors are unmarried men. It's true by definition. And then you can do the transitive property. If A equals B, B equals C, then A equals C. That's true by logical necessity, necessary truth.
Yep.
Okay, and then contingent truth is true, but could have been otherwise. So like it's raining in California today. It could be true now, but it could also have been false.
Yes, logically speaking. It is objectively, if it happened, it's objectively true that it did happen. No one's disputing that it's not true. But logically speaking, it could have been otherwise. And that's why you even have to do like empirical inquiry. And that's why there's even doubt. And that's why there's even some sort of degree of belief with regards to a contingent truth. Whereas with the necessary truth, there's no aspect of belief.
Okay, well,
And
that's
then
what I
the
was
way that I
saying.
was
Did you mean that it had something to do with proving it later? So it sounds like it does. Like,
I mean, I
like
guess yes,
if
but that's not the key point. The key point is like in one case, something simply cannot be untrue. Like it just has to be true. In the other case, it could be true, but also might not be true.
Oof. Okay, so
Even
like if Galatrax right now had three broken bones in his leg, and you and I are standing there and we're looking at it, and we're looking at the X-ray. Maybe we even cut his leg open. We see the broken bones. Like it's just a fact. These bones are broken. There's no other way that could not be true. Like we've verified it. I mean, unless you want to get into like brain in a vat and everything's a virtual reality and physical reality is as some other. But other than going to those extreme levels, like his bones are broken.
so
Now, but however, so that would be like a truth right now. However, like objectively, it's the case. Like it's right here
yes,
in front of him. However, if he's telling a story that he broke his leg, 20 years ago, are you just saying that like it may have been
that's not
it
the
may have
case.
been as true there as it is? He may be telling the story complete fact, but it just like from our view, since we don't know for sure, it's like it could or it couldn't be.
That,
Like there's
that's not the point. That's not the point, but that's a consequence of the point. That's not the point itself, but it's a consequence. So we're in this in the actual point is that both of them are true, right? So we're going by the hypothetical that in this case both of them are true, right? Both the necessary truth. I mean, it's not hypothetical in the case of a necessary truth, but in terms of the contingent truth, we're accepting that it's actually true. He broke three bones, right? It's just that. So in the language they use philosophically in modal philosophy, and I'm not making this up, you can look it up later. But in modal philosophy, they say a necessary truth is true in all possible worlds. Now we're not talking about multiverse, I stress, we're not talking about multiverse. Possible worlds just in the case of conceptually possible. So 1 + 1 is equal to 2 is true in all possible worlds. It's a necessary truth. That will always be the case in all possible worlds. A is equal to A will always be true in all possible worlds. In all possible worlds, it's not true that Galatrax broke, three bones in his leg. In the world, it's true, objectively true, but not in all possible conceptual worlds.
What do you mean
What
by
are the
all
instances of when
possible
anyone was in a different
conceptual world?
conceptual world? So what's the instance where someone was in a different conceptual world?
Are we talking about like multiple timelines and stuff? Like
No,
that physical reality is like
I said I'm not
multiple?
talking about multiverse. It's just in philosophy, a possible world is just like literally a conceptually possible world. You can conceive of a possible world where it didn't happen. Possible world.
But what does that have to do with truth? Because if we're defining truth by something that did physically occur, why would it
No,
matter if
that's
possibly
not
he
how
could
we're
have
defining
broken
truth.
if in possibility he could have broken 4 bones, but he broke 3, but the truth is he broke 3.
But that's the whole point. That's not how we're defining truth, and we're seeing that there are different ways in which things can be a proposition can be true, right? That's not how we're defining truth. 1 + 1, because you just said if we're defining truth as something that happened in physical reality, that's not how we're defining truth when it comes to a mathematical truth. Mathematical truths don't happen in physical reality; they exist timelessly, right? So that's not the definition of truth for
Well,
all
mathematical truths
propositions.
could also be objective truths. Like if morality is objective, right? Murder is morally wrong. By definition, murder is the fault, like wrongfully killing, right? So like wrongfully killing is wrong. It's just tautology. So 2 + 2 = 4. Wrongfully killing is wrong.
I
You can
wouldn't.
still have that same truth.
But regardless of our contentions on like morality and stuff, I just wouldn't bring it into this because it's gonna make things way too much complicated. This is already like complicated with like fairly dry subject matter. No offense though. I mean,
So contingent truth I don't think everyone knows what that is.
yeah,
It's things like the sky appears blue to the human eye, right? So this is true, but it could also not be true to some. Or apples are red. Apples are in fact red, but they're not all red always. So these things are true. There are apples that are red. Or if I say some people are happy or people are happy, it is true that some people are happy. It is true that people are happy. But it's not true for everybody. It's not a universal. So when he
yeah,
says all possible instances of worlds or all possible worlds, it means like universally. That's the opposite. That's where contingent falls off. It's not true universally, necessarily.
So that's one aspect, right? You're talking about like something which is like, not universally true. Not all. When I say people are happy, not all people on earth are happy. They can. I think they'll grasp that. I think the real thing is something could just objectively be the case in physical reality. Like there is a chair in my room. That's still a contingent fact, because it could have been the case that there was no chair in my room. There's a possible world, not a multiverse world, but a possible world where I took that chair and put it outside of my room yesterday, and now there's no chair in my room.
Okay, so just because there's a possibility that they could have been different, how does that affect the fact that there is a truth that something did happen, on, let's say, October 5th at 4:22 p.m. in San Francisco, California, on whatever, 5th Street, that something happened or whatever. I just made that up, obviously, but
it doesn't affect that. But what it does is it shows that it's a different kind of truth from, again, I'm stressing again, from a mathematical truth, where no matter how many possible worlds you think about, a mathematical truth will remain true. The Pythagorean theorem will remain true. The transitive property will remain true. The laws of logic will remain true. 1 + 1 will always equal 2. So it's just talking about the different kinds of truth, even within objective truth.
Okay, whose theories are you getting those from?
It's just standard philosophy. I don't really read the names of these old white dudes,
Okay, but that's an idea. So I'm just saying, did you come up with that, or is it just?
I honestly, I kind of did come. Like, it's not that I was the first person to articulate this, but I came up with it in the sense of I rediscovered it, just like someone might have rediscovered a mathematical theorem. I didn't read it directly from somebody. I've always thought of it. Then I heard the words and I pieced it together. It's not like I read a textbook, one guy's textbook, and all of a sudden, I just imbibed these ideas and I'm parroting. I've always thought these things. At one point, I didn't have the terms to articulate them. The moment the terms, filtered in through us, like here and there through osmosis, I pieced this together. But now, yes, this is just standard philosophical knowledge.
Can I ask
so it's stuff
one
are
question?
True, not dependent on observers. So like contingent truths, they could have been otherwise. Like water boils at 100 degrees Celsius at sea level. This is a contingent truth.
Yep.
There's
even
8 planets, whatever they are, in the solar system. This is a contingent truth. This could have been otherwise.
Yep. At the inception of reality and the universe, God, the demiurge, the stars, whoever the hell, could have said, fuck it, I'm going to change the laws of physics such that water boils at, this temperature, 50 degrees, whatever. And he could have said, I'm going to throw in 5 more planets, fuck it.
Well, I think at the beginning of this,
but he didn't.
Sorry. I hear you're just trying to define different truths because something could have been different, but I guess just in general sense, I don't really see how it's different. Like if I wrote a book, a 10-page book about something that happened to me a month ago, and every single thing in it is exactly what happened in physical reality, it would all be true, and I could say this is the truth of what happened to me on this day, and that would be true. But then I could also say, it's true that stealing televisions out of your neighbor's house is wrong. That's also true. How are those not just both true? Like the one that's of the historical in the past has to be a different truth because it could have been a different way? Is that kind of what you're saying?
No, they are both true. So, here's an analogy, right? Just in order for me to stop being so bored. So, have you heard about this stuff, like how the Greeks had different words for love? Whereas in English, there's only one word for love. The Greeks have agape, philios, eros, blah, 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 right? So
Okay.
it's not that someone is wrong when he says, oh, I love my dog, and then I love my wife, and I love the solar system, if you're a gay glober. But right, so it's like so it's like, it's not, none of those sentences are wrong. It's just like in the case of, oh, it's true that there are whatever, I actually don't even, I forgot the number of planets. Is it 9 planets, whatever? Or it's true that water boils at 100 degrees at sea level, right? It's not that those two things, and it's true that 1 + 1 is equal to 2. It's not that they're not true. It's just that they're different kinds of truth, just like there are different kinds of love. And it's just that English has put people in a prison of using just one word for. I'm not just blaming English. I'm guessing my own language, Tamil, doesn't have that level of philosophical fidelity either. But I'm saying English specifically because that's the language I speak and that's the language we all speak. it doesn't have like that the necessary gradations to do proper philosophy sometimes, the necessary variety.
All right, well then bringing it back to the Bible, trying to link some of that together, like, I mean, would you say that the historical claims in the Bible of this happened, that happened, is one
Yes.
type of truth, and then there's another type of truth of the men whose hands touched the paper and their hands kind of wiggled on the paper is quote unquote God, whatever they, perceive as God, who is an entity, who is XYZ, who they believe as this, is the one that wiggled their hands on the paper. Is that a different kind of truth? And then is there a different kind of like, oh, these morals are correct, these morals are wrong? So is that, would you break it down that there's all those, that it's all different kinds rather than just, so when someone says the Bible is true, it's like, well, is it true that there is a God, an entity out there the way they're describing? That's one thing. Is it true that this man married, begat this son, or this, that, is that true? And then another thing is the
Yeah.
saying that you can beat your slave until he's almost dead. That is a different kind of, so you would break it down, because that's kind of where this stemmed off from. Like,
Exactly. I mean, we're perfectly coming full circle now. Perfectly. That's exactly the idea, right? Because, like, for example, imagine if like the Bible had, like, some things which are empirical claims, some things which are moral claims. So a bunch of contingent facts, both the empirical claims and maybe the moral claims you would say are all necessary facts, but whatever. Like, there's still different kinds of claims. And then imagine if there were some mathematical theorems thrown in there in the Bible, right? Actual mathematical theorems. And maybe there were some physical laws thrown in the Bible, like if water boiling. Like, there would be just so many different kinds of truths in there that you couldn't have, like, to sum it all into one proposition and say this is true. Well, the problem is that is like trying to pull a lot of weight beyond that proposition, this book is true, is pulling a lot more weight than it actually can, because you would have to go into every kind of claim. First of all, see what kind of truth claim is it. Is it contingent? Is it empirical? Is it necessary? And then you'd have to, like, go claim by claim. You could never just have this broad ranging statement, this book is true. It's just an invalid philosophical statement.
Well, it'd be in all three senses. So, like, it'd be necessarily true, it'd be a necessary truth, it would be objectively true in, like, the morality sense, then it would be contingently true.
But again, that could only be done for each claim. You couldn't really do it for a whole compilation of claims.
Well, what if you came to the conclusion, and it says it is true necessarily, objectively, and contingently, and you came to the conclusion that that proposition was true? How would you undo that proposition, that undo that truth that you came to the conclusion?
I'm saying it's actually impossible to do that for a whole bunch of claims. I would literally only be able to do it for each claim. And for each claim, there's going to be a different standard. For example, now
what about for that claim, though? That claim of this proposition is true in these different modalities of truth. Can you determine if that claim is true?
Here's the thing, because that claim okay, let me put it this way. This book is true could only be a contingent fact, and a contingent fact which could only be, and also a fact which could only be established abductively. I'm not going to go into that abductive, deductive, and inductive, because people are going to literally, like, go to sleep and the room is going to empty because already contingent and necessary has been done. But an abductive claim always has doubt because it doesn't have a necessary conclusion. We'll leave that a little philosophical.
Well, we could fix the semantics of, like, this book is true. You could say this book and the entirety of its contents and things it espouts, ideas it espouts, reflect absolute truth, right? If you were to say that in all three modalities of truth, if you were to attack that proposition, you determine that that proposition is true, how would you refute that proposition that you determined was true? This book is true in all modalities.
Because here's the thing, contingent claims for me, because that book, part of that, again, that statement that you made, part of it would be some claims which are contingent. And as far as I'm concerned, contingent claims, even things that I've experienced directly, are always up for review, reinterpretation. Any contingent claim is always up for debate.
That could be a necessary truth claim. So, like, for example, logic is only true. Logic is only necessarily true if this book is necessarily true.
That's just, there's no line of deductive reasoning that could ever lead me to accept that premise. Obviously, if I were to accept that premise, then obviously deductively it would follow that I wouldn't be able to deny it, right? But there is no deductive argument that anyone could make for that, statement.
Okay, so if you did though, if you were to have a deductive argument that was able to make you say, this necessary truth is true, A equals B, B equals C, because this text and what it reflects absolute truth, the laws of logic, the Bible, etc., then you wouldn't be able to untrue that. You wouldn't be able to dispute that truth. It's just locked in because it's deductively proven.
Well, obviously in that case, but here's the thing: you're doing it's a hypothetical where baked into it, we have something which is just philosophically impossible, because there's no set of contingent claims that can make that by through you can't string together a bunch of contingent claims and reach a necessary conclusion.
Can you string together a bunch of necessary claims and get a
You can string
necessary
together a bunch of
conclusion?
necessary claims and then reach a
Yeah.
necessary conclusion, but you can't string together it's just philosophically impossible to string together some necessary claims, some contingent claims, and or all contingent claims and reach a necessary conclusion.
It's like the laws of logic, for example, presuppose a mind to your that claim. So it's necessary that they have a mind.
Well, we don't even disagree on that, right? Like, so I'm not an atheist or something. So, but I'm saying like the Bible itself consists of, you would agree, some claims which are philosophically speaking contingent. So there's no way in which I could philosophically string together some of those contingent claims with some of the necessary claims. Now,
Well, you'd walk through each necessary claim, and if the end of the argument was it is necessary for this mind or this entity to be the biblical God, then what you'd have is a strung together necessary claim argument that is a necessary truth.
Yeah, but it's not possible though, because again, the biblical God has a lot of contingent facts associated with him, and you're not going to start with those contingent facts and then get to, let's say, and therefore this specific God with these specific contingent facts, like for example the contingent fact that he parted the Red Sea, whether that's true or not, or the contingent fact that he's loving, whether that's true or not, or the contingent fact that he's triune or whatever, whether you guys believe it, whatever, right? Any of these
You wouldn't
contingent
need
facts.
to. If the biblical God is the only God that can account for necessarily the laws of logic, for example, and then the biblical God is revealed to us through Scripture, then it would be necessarily true based on the fact, right? You're just drawing from necessary truth claims. You wouldn't need to prove each claim true in and of itself. If you just proved that this is the only thing that accounts for those things, you would necessarily prove that that is a necessary truth.
No, here's a sleight of hand, and I'm not saying you're doing it consciously. I'm saying it's because I know this argument. I've heard it from multiple people, so it's just a sleight of hand that exists within the argument. So don't take it as an insult. But the sleight of hand is saying the biblical God. No, the biblical God just means there's a necessary truth version of God, and then to say the biblical God is simply saying now the necessary version truth of God plus some contingent characteristics or plus some contingent facts, meaning that he did this, this, and this. So it's not like there is no the biblical God cannot be the source of.
Well, you could call him Henry if he has those attributes, the same attributes as the biblical God. It's the
but those attributes are contingent facts, right? In order for it to be the biblical God, some of those attributes are contingent facts. And like I said, there's no argument. And we're really boring the fuck out of the room, by the way, right now. But there's no argument where you can string together some contingent facts and reach a necessary conclusion.
No, you'd prove that it would be the biblical God first with necessary, like a transitive property, right? Just necessary truths, and then it ends on that. And then it doesn't matter. I don't know what you mean by contingent attributes. What are you referring to?
Contingent, like for example, would the biblical God be the biblical God if it wasn't loving?
If it wasn't God?
If it wasn't loving specifically.
Would the biblical God be the biblical God if the biblical God wasn't loving? No, loving is a necessary attribute. I wouldn't say it's a contingent attribute.
It is. It definitely, conceptually speaking, whether or not you believe ontologically is necessary, that's a separate category. Conceptually speaking, the biblical God, being loving is a contingent fact, or the contingent God being benevolent is a contingent fact. It could be otherwise. It could be the case that the consciousness which created everything was, apathetic. Could be the case that it was just not loving. Could be the case that it was, that's not a necessary fact. Conceptually speaking, you may believe that ontologically it cannot be otherwise. So this is another little subtle key distinction. But conceptually, epistemologically, it could be otherwise.
But wait, so you're saying that God's love is contingent, but it's not. It's not something he could lack or change. It's a necessary attribute.
Remember, you may believe, and I'm not even going to argue with you on this, that ontologically speaking, you may hold that position. That ontologically, that could not be otherwise. But conceptually speaking, it could be otherwise. And so, therefore, in an actual argument, that would still stand as a contingent fact that God is benevolent, right? It would stand as and imagine if you were a Christian who took the position of like the triune nature of God, or that Jesus coexisted with the Father. That is also conceptually speaking a contingent fact. Could have been the case that there was only one conscious node in the beginning, not 3 or 2 or whatever. You may believe that ontologically that's just a brute fact, and that it couldn't have been otherwise because that simply was the starting point. But conceptually,
you can't separate ontology from epistemology. From what is to what you can conceive without destroying the meaning of the thing.
No, you epistemology. You have to separate it. I mean, that's why we even have the category of contingent fact, because ontology and epistemology, like what Gio said, that's the reason Gio is even getting a little confused by what I was saying at the beginning, and it's not just him; it's other people. Like if someone broke 3 bones, it is the case that they broke 3 bones. Ontologically, it is the case that you broke 3 bones.
Yeah, but the claim it could be otherwise about God's nature, where I claim that it's a necessary attribute. If you were to claim it could be otherwise, that's your conceptualization, and it presupposes a possible world where God's nature differs. But if God has an immutable necessary property of immutability, then God's nature does not differ, so therefore it couldn't be otherwise.
No, it doesn't presuppose anything, right? Our epistemology is this, these categories are the starting point of epistemology. If we're actually doing proper philosophical epistemology, these categories are the starting point.
Yeah, it's saying conceptually it could be otherwise. It's like I can imagine it, or it's metaphysically possible. It's just imagination. You can imagine a square circle. That doesn't make it.
No, you can't imagine a square circle. That's the problem. See, that's why that's necessarily impossible. You can't imagine it, nor can you even conceive of it, because those are also 2 separate things.
If I can say it, I can imagine it.
No, that's not true. You can verbalize it. You can't imagine it.
How do you know?
Well, now we're getting to sophistry.
That's not sophistry. How do you know that I can't imagine a square circle?
Well, because
let's say I could. Does that make it?
You can't imagine.
Let's say I could. Does that make it coherent or possible in reality? Of course not.
No. Here's the thing. First of all, you are being a sophist right now. No offense, but it is what it is. We're just going to call a spade when it's happening. I probably don't. I'm not saying I'm just simply saying, because you can verbalize the word square circle, just like I can verbalize the terms unmarried, bachelor, but I can neither conceive nor imagine those things. I can verbalize. You can verbalize logical contradictions, but I can conceive and imagine of God, being apathetic. The first consciousness feeling apathy.
You can imagine contradictions. You can imagine A
equals not A. You can't imagine contradictions. You can only verbalize them. Meaning you can map syllables to something.
Then how do you know what I'm talking about if I say a square circle? If you can't imagine,
because all you're saying is an instance of a logical contradiction. Because what is a circle? A circle is a 2-dimensional shape where all points on the exterior are equidistant to the center.
Okay, I'm not being a sophist, but if you can't imagine squaring a circle or circling a square, then how can what I say make any sense to you?
You can't imagine that. You can verbalize it. I'm saying you can't.
Okay, if you can't imagine it, when I say it, how does it have any meaning to you?
Because we're taking each word individually. I'm picturing a circle, then I'm picturing a square, and then I can't make them fit atop each other.
Yes. So for example, it's like saying you can both, again, talk in standard classical spatial terms. You can both be in the spot you're in and not be in the spot you're in. I can think of both instances, me being in the spot I'm in and me not being in the spot I'm in. But I can't both imagine myself being in the spot I'm in and not being in the spot I'm in. I can imagine them separately, and then linguistically you can club them together and say, that's what we're doing with a square circle. If we were to break down square circle, we'd have to go like bit by bit. This is a two-dimensional shape, correct. Center is equidistant to all points on the periphery. Center is not equidistant to all points in the periphery. That's square. And then, that's where the contradiction arises. One of the first contradiction. So we're just, right? So we can club together a whole bunch of definitions and say square, and a whole bunch of definitional attributes and say circle. And then we could say square circle verbally. But I'm not actually conceiving of it any point throughout.
Right, because it destroys meaning. But I can imagine a square circle. I can imagine squaring a circle.
Okay, bro. I mean, if you can, then we're just living in two different realities.
But you're probably just imagining transforming a square into a circle or a circle into a square.
Yeah.
Okay. But it's a circle with 4 sides. I can imagine that.
That's like saying I can imagine an elephant that's a whale.
That would at least be doable because neither of those are like truly necessary fact-based definitions. But you could have whale, elephant. But yeah, they couldn't. If something couldn't be exactly.
It's not like saying that because you can imagine an elephant. That's also a whale.
I'm saying you can't imagine logical contradictions. If you're saying you can imagine logical contradictions, then because the reason I think you're committing yourself to this position is because I've said that they're God could be, it's conceptually possible that God could be not benevolent. Whether or not that's ontologically true or not is irrelevant. Conceptually,
well, that's if God's nature is not necessarily like love, truth, righteousness, etc.
Yes, because again, it cannot.
Yeah, so you would be saying that those are attributes that he could lack.
Yes,
without ceasing to be God. But if he lacked those attributes, he would cease to be God.
I mean, this is just a contingent. If that were true, it would still be. Even if that were just ontologically true, and just God wakes up and that's just the way he was, right? Let's just put it in colloquial terms. If God and all
that's definitionally a necessary truth. It's necessary for those things to be true.
No, that would be in terms of ontology, you could call that a necessary truth. In terms of epistemology, that would be what we would call a brute fact. And all worldviews have a brute fact, so that's fine. I'm not saying so. If God is benevolent, I'm not disputing that God is benevolent. I mean, I personally don't believe that, but I'm not even. That's not the point of this argument. That could very well be true. I could be wrong, and you could be right. God is benevolent, but that would just be, in terms of philosophy, that would be what we would call a brute fact.
So you're talking about like there's an ontological necessity and epistemological certainty. So like the truth that could not be otherwise versus the degree to which we can know that truth.
No, I'm just saying something could be absolutely true, but in terms of epistemology, it could still be a contingent fact. In that case, it would just be a brute fact, right? So, for example, here's the thing. So there are we'll look at 2 kinds of contingent facts. So we both agree that God exists, blah blah blah, right? So God, and you all already understand that, like, God could have made 9 planets, 10 planets, 12 planets. He could have made a water boil at a different temperature. So we know that's cool. We both understand. You even steel manned it for me better than I was doing, such that the room could understand. So we both know that those are contingent facts. Now, in that case, it's pretty easy because God, we can just picture God just changing the parameters of reality and making it and having done it differently, right? So it's pretty easy to look at those contingent facts. But then what about the contingent facts which apply to God himself, that he himself couldn't have changed, like what you guys would call God's nature? Well, those, again, because we can participate in the magical process of epistemology, can look at even those facts and say, well, that could have been otherwise. Maybe God, he could have not been benevolent. Maybe he wasn't, Jesus wasn't sitting at his right hand. Maybe, his name wasn't Yahweh, or whatever the hell, right?
But, do you think that epistemology derives from ontology?
Let me just finish that. We can conceive of that conceptually, right? So for us, epistemologically, that will always be a contingent fact. Yet from God's reality, that's just always been the way he's always been, right? In that case, that's a contingent fact conceptually, but it's now become a brute fact meaning it just simply always was. Whereas the other contingent facts are the ones that God determined, and he could have determined otherwise at his whim. Whereas the contingent facts which apply to God himself, those would be just brute facts.
But epistemic limitation doesn't affect any type of ontological necessity. Epistemology derives from ontology. It's a derivative.
That's true. However, yet when
But how can you separate the two if one is derived from the other?
No one's separating the two in terms of like some sort of arbitrary separation.
Wait a minute. Hang on, pause. Because 5 minutes ago, you said we need to separate the two when I said we can't separate the two.
I said, no. I said we are not separating. So right now, maybe I could have possibly misspoke, but I don't think I misspoke then though. But I could have, right? Just in all.
I can tell you exactly what I said. I wrote it down.
That's cool, but like I'm still saying that I'm not saying we are separate. Here's the point. I'll say it now. Maybe I misspoke in the past because we're slightly in debate mode, so I could like flub that a bit. But I'll say it now clearly. So it's not that you can separate them. You can't separate anything in reality. Yet they are distinct.
So I said you can't separate ontology from epistemology, from what is to what you can conceive, without destroying the meaning of the thing. And you said we can separate the two.
Yeah, well, I was being colloquial because, again, if I want to get autistic and philosophical, separation cannot even exist in reality. It's just ontologically.
Exactly, because everything is
however, distinction can exist. For example, you cannot separate 1 from 2. There's no decimal point at which 1 separates from 2.
You can't separate anything because
exactly. Yet they are distinct. I can't separate my mind from my body ontologically and ontologically. Ultimately, monism is true. The monistic position. Yet distinction exists, like both conceptually, ontologically. So distinction and separation are two separate concepts. Separation is actually a concept which cannot truly ever happen between anything. It can only be in some sort of very limited contingent sense. Distinctions, however, always exist. And ontology.
But that's what I was talking about when I said you can't separate ontology from epistemology.
Well, but you
can't distinguish between the two.
Yeah, but distinctions exist though, right? Separation can't exist between anything in reality. Yet distinction can exist.
You can't separate anything because everything is in everything.
Yeah, basically.
A wise man once told me.
I mean, like, without getting too fucking gay about it, like I said, all 1, 2, 3, 4, they're all fucking distinct, but you can't separate them, right? Your consciousness and your body, they're distinct, yet you can't separate them. Where are you going to find the dividing line between your consciousness and it's just a simple, basic point, which I don't have to get into. Everyone gets that, I guess. So so previously when you said separate, maybe I subconsciously made the decision to let's not go into this whole distinction separation thing because I've already fucking brought up a bunch of boring points and bored the fuck out of the room. So let's just roll with it.
I'll just end on, if you get rid of epistemic access to an ontological necessity, it doesn't negate the necessity. It just shows that humans are finite.
It's not about negating the necessity. Like I'm saying, when you think necessity, you just think it has to be. I'm saying that that can't not be true or something. It may be like I said, a brute fact, right? In some sense, I get like if there's a brute fact about God, that about God's nature, that God couldn't even change because that's just the way He's always been, and yet we can look at it and conceptually and say, well, that could have been otherwise. That will never change the brute fact about God. So but it's just because epistemology and ontology are distinct, and because in order for us to have intelligibility, we have to just take epistemology as it is. It's always just going to be a contingent fact, and it's always just going to have to be that way. And we're never going to be able to reach a necessary conclusion about a brute fact. And that's just the way it is, and you're just going to have to accept that.
Well, no, that's just imagining God's nature as a given that might be different.
Yeah, exactly. But here's the thing: that's just how epistemology works.
Everything and everything. Always remember.
Is everyone getting bored?
Of course they're bored, bro.
You guys are in the black hole of philosophy.
Yeah, we got into the philosophical black hole. I didn't want to go there. I tried to keep it, but I had to go there in the end.
I'm fine. I can't believe it worked out to Paz's whole motto of everything's in everything. You can't separate anything.
Well, I disagree with that. I think there's unity in particulars, diversity, universals.
Well, I don't disagree with that either, but that's because distinction and separation are distinct
You guys
concepts.
couldn't separate anything a minute ago. Now you're saying we can't separate things?
No, I'm saying distinct. I don't know who you're talking to, but I'm saying I'm making my position clear that distinction exists, separation doesn't.
Hold on, man. I wrote this down. Let me check my notes. Yep. You said you can't separate anything.
Yeah, you can't separate anything, and yet distinction still exists. Did you write that part down? Because I said it maybe 20 times.
I don't know. I heard everything's in everything, so.
Now you said that. You heard that from your own mouth. I specifically used the number line, and I used the mind and the body. So.
I do like the motto, everyone love everyone. That was a good one. Will Ferrell. Semi-pro. Like, that's great right there. It's a great motto. Everyone love everyone. But yeah, what's up? What's the topic?
I guess I would argue with Galley if he thinks that if it was possible to have a universe with no minds, but there's stuff that exists in it, if he thinks that that's actually logically possible or not.
To have a universe with no minds, but there's actually things in it.
Yeah, there's like stars and planets and things like that, but there's no minds.
Yeah.
So then wouldn't that mean that there would be ontology with no epistemology?
Do you mean like no minds, humans, God, period?
Yeah, no minds.
Oh, then no, I don't agree. Because you don't even have like possibility without a mind.
Okay, how do you prove that to be true?
How do you define possible?
Like you said, nothing could exist without a mind, right? That's your argument, right?
How do you define possibility or possible?
I'm not sure how you would define possibility.
Well, that's your question.
Able
Is it
to
possible that a
happen.
universe could exist without a mind? So if you don't know how to define a word in your question, I don't know how to answer your question.
No, able to have possible, able to happen.
Yes.
Or to exist or something. Wow, that's like an easy one, right?
I feel like
You
it
guys
would
both agree with
require,
that?
I feel like to really answer that question about the universe, you'd have to have a fundamental understanding of reality that you can make the claim that you have it, but I don't think any human has it.
You'd have to have a fundamental understanding of reality to make that claim.
But a fundamental understanding of, the fabric of reality in our in nature.
To make the claim otherwise, too, yeah. Both claims are dependent on a universal understanding of reality. So a mind. So you just refuted your point.
No. I'm not saying that I have an answer to that question either. I'm just saying that you don't have it either. You can't make the claim that there could be a universe that exists without a mind.
And you can't make the claim otherwise, so we get nowhere.